So again, thank you so much for taking some time to join us today to talk about the local food system planning program. I'm Sarah Brown. I am the Senior Manager of Policy and Planning with Foodwell Alliance. And today you're also going to hear from Emma, who is Foodwell Alliance's Policy and Community Engagement Manager, and Shima, who is our lead planner at the Atlanta Regional Commission. So before we get into the details of the program, we do just kind of first want to discuss the value in planning for your local food system. So a plan sets clear goals and strategies to move towards a more equitable and sustainable food system and provides really like a coordinating structure for multiple food-related initiatives. So while we expect cities to own some of these plan strategies and kind of support initial organizing on others, these are really intended to be implemented in coordination with community organizations. And we try to structure the goals and strategy in the plans to build on existing initiatives that are already underway on the ground and that are supported by community-based organizations. We really find that plans that are community-driven and consensus-based have a lot greater potential to address intersectional barriers to food access and bring about really transformational change in the cities that we're touching. We like to frame these plans as both visionary and practical. So the process provides an opportunity for local governments to co-create a vision and actionable goals alongside community leaders. And then on the practical side, we like to kind of jumpstart bringing that vision to life through dedicated funding and committee oversight for top priority and short-term recommendations within the first 1 to 2 years of implementation. So just to ground us in some common language here, what is a local food system plan? This is formerly known as a city agriculture plan under our programming, so you may be more familiar with that branding. But essentially, it is the same program. And what we're developing here is a set of policy and program recommendations for a city to strengthen their local food system over the next 3 to 5 years. We've rebranded this year really to align with how these types of programs are being discussed nationally, and also to encompass the fact that our work is across the full food system and not just focused on the local agriculture piece. So this program is facilitated in partnership by Foodwell Alliance, and we're a Metro Atlanta-based nonprofit. We work to provide resources to support local growers in order to connect and build healthier communities. And we serve over 300 farms, gardens, and orchards in Clayton, Cobb, DeKalb, Fulton, and Gwinnett counties. And then the Atlanta Regional Commission, of course, is the regional planning and intergovernmental coordination agency for the broader 11-county Metro Atlanta region. So in working to develop a plan, Foodwell first leads a 3 to 4 month inclusive community engagement phase to really gather residents' input on their experience accessing and growing local food in their city. We then kind of pass the baton to ARC, and they utilize that feedback to guide a steering committee through a formal planning process to develop a strategic plan. Foodwell Alliance then steps back in to help establish a local food and ag committee and awards a $75,000 grant to implement projects within the plan. And new this year, that cash grant will be supplemented with $25,000 of in-kind support through Foodwell Alliance's other programs like community garden infrastructure support, orchard plantings, compost deliveries, workshops, volunteer days, and more. So here we just have a summary of the regional impact of the 4 prior approved plans over the past 5 years. So we've reached over 16,000 community members in our service area through educational programming, marketing campaigns, and events. 3 food and ag policy committees have been established to ensure coordinated implementation and serve as boards of experts on local food and ag issues for the community and the city to lean on. And we've had over 180 implementation projects, including things like 2 new farmers markets, 1 new community garden, 2 new orchards, 3 community compost pilot programs, a local food co-op feasibility study, seed libraries, a local food system marketing brand, technical assistance workshops, events, festivals, and many educational workshops. So here we just have a kind of overview of our program history. We piloted this program starting in 2019 with the city of East Point. And since their plan adoption in 2021, we've worked with 1 city per year to develop a plan. Alpharetta has also completed their 2-year implementation grant period, and the cities of Jonesboro and Austell are actively implementing their plans. We're currently working to finalize the most recent plan with City of Clarkston. And of course, we're here today because applications are now open for city number 6. And you can see that our 5 cities, plan cities, are kind of overlaid on Food Alliance's service area. And while we're limited by our small staff capacity to kind of work with one city per year through this intensive process, over a quarter of the cities within our 5 counties have applied for the program. So we feel like that really indicates a growing interest in planning strategically for local food systems within our region. And here we have kind of a just breakdown of the timeline of the planning and implementation phases. So applications are open September through November. This year they're closing on Friday, November 14th. Applications require joint submission from a city staff member and community organization who's interested in participating through the full process into implementation. And then we select one city per year in December. After we get the MOU signed with that selected city, we launch right into community engagement led by Foodwell Alliance in the spring. We develop those methods for community engagement jointly with city staff and applicable organizations, but they typically include a community survey, focus groups and interviews, tabling opportunities, and community asset mapping. And the outcome of that phase is a written report of all findings with potential projects and partnerships that are identified by the community and are paired with an analysis of kind of baseline conditions of food and agriculture operations within the city. Then ARC launches into the planning phase. They host 5 monthly meetings over the summer with a balanced steering committee of city officials, community organization reps, and community members. And they work to analyze that community data and utilize their collective experience to develop the plan's strategic recommendations. The plan is then presented to the mayor and council for adoption. And post-adoption, we recommend as best practice to form a local food and ag committee to guide coordinated implementation and disperse Food Alliance's $75,000 grant funds directly to community partners to really get the ball rolling on the short-term recommendations. The Food Alliance guided implementation phase lasts for 2 years, but really with the hope that other longer-term fundraising opportunities are identified during that time and the work continues on in the city well past that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emma to talk about more specific common plan recommendations and what implementation has looked like in our past cities.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So with 4 completed plans under our belt and our Clarkston plan pending approval, we have had the opportunity to identify the areas in which local food system plans can make the most impact. So these are our 5 program focus areas, and I want to express that these are not all inclusive, and each plan will naturally remain responsive to a city's unique needs and resources. But we have seen recommendations typically fall into these 5 umbrella categories. So expanding healthy local food access. Plans can strengthen access to food grown or processed locally. Examples of this might include farmers market support, so expanding market partnerships, creating new markets, looking into doubling EBT benefit programs, mobile markets, so creating or supporting citywide mobile markets or feasibility studies, local procurement partnerships, so connecting with small businesses and healthy corner stores to populate their stores with food from local growers, supporting local growers. Our plans can provide both social and physical infrastructure to build capacity for growers of all experience levels. So in some cities, this has looked like expanding community garden space, so including identifying private spaces or city-owned spaces to be growing areas in the city, looking into utility easements for those growing spaces, also developing a home growers network to connect existing growers in our cities, and then increasing or establishing workshops and more technical training for growers in that area. So encouraging a supportive policy environment in the city could provide opportunities for local growers to co-create a vision alongside their community members, while also aligning their policies and ordinances to better support their local food system. So this is where we see our recommendation of establishing a local food and agriculture committee come into play, where that will have multiple areas of representation from city to active organizations to implementation partners. Offering economic development incentives. We saw this in Alpharetta, and then reviewing current zoning to increase growing spaces within the city. So anything happening on the city policy level, we see kind of falling into this focus area. Next, promoting sustainable practices. Our plans can highlight ways in which to build resilient and intentional food systems. So this includes waste management and sustainability initiatives. We've seen 3 different cities develop some sort of composting pilot. We've also seen cities develop programs for pollinator habitat support. And then lastly, increasing community connection. So these plans actually have the ability to strengthen community ties through events, shared food experiences, educational partnerships. So this could be anything from expanding current events that happen in your city, bringing in new events, um, finding new ways to communicate across spaces within the city, and really planning intentionally for those. So some of the common priority recommendations listed here have emerged as top priorities in at least 3 of the 4 adopted plans across Metro Atlanta. And you can see where each of these recommendations align with one of those main program focus areas. So whether or not to pursue any of these recommendations depends on partner and city capacity. So we ask questions like, what existing efforts can this local food system plan build on? What organizational partners are present and have the capacity to take on additional responsibilities with the added short-term funding? So again, these aren't exhaustive. They just represent recurring trends that we've seen over the past 5 years of planning in cities across our service area. So to get a little more into our prior cities, East Point was our pilot city. They were selected in 2019 and adopted their plan in 2021. And they are unique because they opted to use their $75,000 food well implementation grant as match to secure a 3-year, $250,000 USDA Regional Food System Partnership grant. So this grant was able to fund an urban agriculture manager position for 2 years, which that individual was able to coordinate extensive food system activity and growth over that time period. And the city has actually set aside funding to make this position permanent within the city, which is very exciting. So they hosted over 50 events engaging over 3,500 residents. They directly invested or engaged with over 32 community partners through programming, feasibility studies, and then they provided technical assistance to make this local growth sustainable. So you can really see how they were able to stretch their implementation a little further because they were able to leverage that 3-year USDA grant. But the city has intentionally planned to keep this momentum going even after that grant is closed out. So Alpharetta wrapped up their 2-year implementation period at the end of 2024. And they really stand out for the strong city investment that they have in local agriculture, led by dedicated community agriculture staff within their Parks and Rec department. Alpharetta is also a little unique in that the city chose to match the $75,000 Food Well Alliance grant with equal city funds. So they chose to match the funding in cash rather than the in-kind support that we typically ask from a city. So they also have a city-run farm on city-owned land, Old Rucker Farm, and this has served as a production space and community education hub for the plan and for the city as a whole. So some of their key outcomes focus around education and engagement. They hosted over 84 workshops, engaging over 1,000 restaurants. They have partnerships with 6 schools, including an agribusiness program and a community-supported agricultural program, and they are actively expanding into other schools. They piloted sustainability initiatives, such as a community composting program with over 70 households enrolled, and they launched a native plant certification program and 2 seed libraries. And they've also established a new greenhouse for seed starting and season extension. They've donated over 5,000 pounds of produce to local food banks, and they're looking on how to make their farmers market more equitable and reach more audiences. So Jonesboro recently adopted their plan at the end of 2023, and they're currently in year 2. of their $75,000 implementation grant period. This was a city that chose to um, have their implementation grant flow through partners. So there are three primary partnerships engaged in the implementation of Jonesboro's plan. The Jonesboro Community Garden, run in conjunction with their police department, is utilizing funding for infrastructure improvements, such as constructing a pavilion to extend the usability of the space and host more workshops. Hand, Heart, and Soul Project is a local nonprofit, um, and they are using funding to launch new educational programming at the community garden for technical support, so sort of office hours for growers where they can drop in and get hands-on assistance. They've launched a holistic growing series that covers everything from nutrition to growing the food. And they are producing an advocacy film series that highlights local food and local food leaders to a larger audience. And then lastly, Harvest Village is another local organization, and they are developing a feasibility study to launch mobile markets. They are expanding programming in schools for both adults and students. Right now, they're in over 20 schools within Clayton County, and they are also increasing food access points all over the city by installing coolers that are stocked with food produced by local farmers or prepared meals that are coming straight from locally grown sources. And then lastly, Austell is the most recent city to adopt their local food system plan. And they launched into action quickly by forming their local food and agriculture committee. And this is a group that is a collaborative effort between active implementation partners and city staff. And some of the initial projects that we've seen already get off the ground in Austell are planting a community orchard in partnership with a local farm to table restaurant and farming space in the center of the city. They've also piloted a community compost drop-off and curbside pickup program that serves not only the city of Austell, but also a neighboring city of Mableton. And this is done in conjunction with local partners. And some of their upcoming priorities focus around accessibility, such as installing ADA, accessible garden beds, and walking paths in the garden, education and engagement, so launching monthly growers workshops and strengthening the existing school garden clubs with lesson plans, external partner, and infrastructure support to make sure that these programs are sustainable for the school system. So they are really getting a lot done in their first year. Their local food and ag committee meets bi-monthly to set the budget, coordinate with any active partners, and align on upcoming initiatives. Okay, so I want to dive a little deeper into the application process. We ask that each application be submitted jointly by a city official and an individual representing a community-based organization that is actively committed to supporting the implementation of the plan. So this approach ensures early communication, collaboration, and shared ownership between the city and the community partners that are active in the city. Strong applications align or co-identify both city priorities and the goals of local food system organizations. And this organization can be a nonprofit, community garden leader, a local farm, small business, school, faith-based organization, just as long as they're operating locally and they are bought into supporting the implementation of the plan. Once selected, we keep that collaboration going throughout the process from each of these key groups. So city staff, we like to see buy-in in moving the process forward, coordinating logistics, and ensuring that we are aligning with other active city plans and local goals. Community partners, we ask that they assist in co-developing data collection tools and guide effective community engagement and outreach efforts. And then naturally, we see the residents as a third partner in this to gather their feedback, document their lived experiences in their city's food system, and even bring to light more opportunities for leadership within their community. So cities are selected jointly by Foodwell Alliance and Atlanta Regional Commission. Selection is based on readiness and the potential for impact. And we do acknowledge that this might look different for every city. So some criteria that we do look at includes cross-departmental commitment. So staff from multiple departments in the city that are engaged and ready to participate in this process. Could be Parks and Rec, economic development, planning. Active community interest, so enthusiasm from the resident side, who are ready to shape and implement the plan in their local food system. So this could just be an active grower community. It's great if you have previous experience with planning or with a Atlanta Regional Commission partnership before. This really shows that you're engaged and ready to take on a formal planning process over the course of this next year. Diverse stakeholder engagement. So we want to hear a range of voices invested in strengthening the local food system. And we understand that not every organization is going to be directly tied to food and ag. But then we do want to see the strong local food and ag partners highlighted. So farms, gardens, and businesses that can really leverage their programming and their resources to build a more connected and resilient food system. So I see a couple of questions coming into the chat, but I do want to pass it over to Sarah, and she's going to run through a couple questions that have come up in this process, and maybe we'll have the chance to answer some of your questions there.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. We are going to get to your individual questions in just a moment, but we have seen some common questions arise over the past few processes that we've led. So wanted to address some of these kind of FAQs to see if we can clear up some of the uncertainty that y'all may still have after that presentation. So I'm just going to run through a few frequently asked questions, and then we're going to open it up to the attendees. So first off, and I think we've been through this, but just to consolidate all of the asks in one place, what are the requirements of the city itself? So we ask that city staff serve on the project management team. This is a group that meets every couple of weeks throughout the full process to help guide project logistics and help us coordinate internally with other city staff. We asked the city identify 3 to 4 representatives to serve on the planning steering committee. And as Emma mentioned, if those can be kind of cross-departmental representation, that's great, from planning, community development, economic development, parks and rec, whomever is kind of actively working on adjacent planning processes and processes in the city that will touch on local food and ag issues. However, the city can assist with approval and adoption of the completed plan. So getting us on the agenda for council meetings, kind of teeing us up internally, that's always greatly appreciated. And then, of course, the biggest ask is that commitment to a $75,000 in-kind match of the implementation grant. And we look for that in staff time, use of city spaces, marketing services, et cetera. I know this is typically where we get a lot of questions. We have a couple of hypothetical breakdowns of kind of this match valuation if you want to get into the nitty gritty, but we don't ask for an exact accounting of the match. It's really kind of a spirit of equal commitment. And it's very easy to meet over the 2 years of implementation if we're correctly valuing all the staff time and marketing services, et cetera. So second question, how does this integrate with other city initiatives? So prior to planning, we go through and analyze existing city plans and zoning ordinances to identify areas of potential overlap. And we always try to actively coordinate with other planning consultants or groups that are working on comp plan updates, other master plans for individual departments within the city, and make sure that our recommendations align with existing city priorities. And again, we typically see that alignment with things around sustainability and green initiatives, parks and rec, and other health and wellness topics. Third, what if my city isn't ready for a full standalone plan? We are fully committed to work around local food and ag, but we recognize this can be kind of more of a niche topic for city planners or folks that may be newer to this space. But we'd still love to connect with you. We're so excited that you're here trying to learn more about the process. And again, this is an annual application process. So if you're not ready this year, we'd love to stay in contact and talk about how we can help your city, get ready for a future application period, or if we can support kind of structuring recommendations around local food and ag that you want to incorporate into your existing city planning as kind of a jumping off point for a future plan, or even connecting on resources for one-off implementation projects if you want to kind of get the ball rolling with something like a community compost pilot, an orchard planting, community garden workday, et cetera. We're happy to help with those resources as well. Finally, on the slide, how are the plan priorities established? Those come directly from the consolidated community feedback. So again, that analysis of the full community engagement phase and then interpretation of that data by ARC and the steering committee. And while they do generally fall into those 5 program focus areas that we discussed, they are, of course, tailored to the unique characteristics of the city. So these last 2 FAQs are about funding specifically. What types of projects can the implementation grant fund? So this is meant to really jumpstart the plan by funding projects within the first 1 to 2 years of implementation that have been prioritized through that community engagement and steering committee process. The funding is unrestricted in that it can be used for materials, staff time, equipment, et cetera. But really just making sure that it's serving those top priority recommendations as they were laid out within the plan. And then how are the funds dispersed? This can be an ongoing discussion. There are a few ways to structure this. We found it's best practice for the funds to be given directly to community implementation partners. That kind of cuts through having to earmark city budgets and potentially having that roll over year to year within the city budget. It just is a little bit cleaner. And we also recommend using a small amount of the grant funds to compensate members of that committee that we mentioned organizing, who will really help to guide implementation project coordination across those partners. And so just as a final reminder, applications close on Friday, November 14th. So we've got about a month left for the application period. We didn't run through the application questions themselves. We can do that, or of course, send out the link for you all after this presentation, but it's a very brief application. It's, I think, 6 total questions. It should probably take no more than an hour. Really discuss kind of your vision for any ideas around projects that relate to local food and ag you have for your city, any known barriers to success for local food and ag in terms of ordinances or other stumbling blocks, and then identifying potential stakeholders within the local food and ag system within your city. So it's very brief. I'm happy to walk through that. And again, if you have questions that you don't feel comfortable asking today or that come up for you later, please reach out to me, Emma or Shima at any time. We'd love to set up a call. Also, if you want to tie in any other city representatives or community partners so we can run through a similar presentation or project background with them, we'd be happy to do that over the course of the next month to try and set you up for success with your application.